Alright, so I am back from Gamescom and CommandCOM, as I'm sure you can probably tell by the fact that there is Gamescom and CommandCOM footage now up on the channel, and I would like to share with you my thoughts on what we got to play there, what we got to experience at CommandCOM, our interactions with the devs, and just kind of the sort of conversations that we had there, and my thoughts on the alpha, and of course the direction of Command & Conquer. First up, you've been wanting to know, is the game any good? Yes and no. Of course, it's a more complicated question than that, as the explanation is quite large, and you have to consider a lot of different things. For example, it's in alpha. Alpha is alpha. If you're in the alpha, then you probably know that there's about a patch roughly every month. However, the patch that's coming for August, that is what we got to play at CommandCOM. We also got to play an additional build, which will likely be coming out in September or October. It was only in progress for about 2 weeks when we had got to play it, so it was extremely unfinished. That's the footage that you saw on the channel. That version of the game is extremely new, and of course it's building on the previous versions and the patches, but that is likely going to be the September or October patch. Now, these two patches, they felt a lot different than the earlier versions of the alpha. From about March, when they launched the closed alpha, until just this August patch, the game has not felt good at all. At least when playing on my computer. I still don't have the August patch just yet, so I don't know how it's going to be running, but on those Gamescom computers, the game felt a lot different. It actually felt like it was pretty much possible to micro. Currently, it does feel a lot more StarCrafty, a lot more macro-oriented, but there is some micro. Granted, it's not nearly as much as, say, Red Alert 3, but there is a little bit to be had. It does make a minor difference in a number of engagements, but ultimately, in the game right now, macro reigns supreme, and in a lot of cases, you have to throw down 2 war factories, 3 barracks, multiple airfields to really stay on top of your production if you're rocking, say, 3 bases and a couple of oil derricks, which oil derricks now not a second resource, and they work very similarly to how Tiberium spikes and oil derricks worked in previous games. You instead have to build them. So it creates an interesting dynamic between choosing, am I going to get a couple of oil derricks, which are cheaper but don't bring in as much income, but you also don't have any workers there, or building just a regular supply center, which of course then has workers. So now your building can be harassed, or your workers can be harassed if you build a supply center, whereas if you go for the oil derrick, you've only got to worry about that oil derrick. There's of course no workers there. So it creates an interesting dynamic, and one thing that the devs did talk about them adding into the game is the capture mechanic. It's not in right now, and it likely won't be in until after October, I'm guessing, because it wasn't in either of the builds that we played. So it probably won't be in for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long it takes them to implement it. Which is another point that I do want to bring up, is that the progress that the devs have made on the game, while it is a good amount of progress and it's certainly a step into the right direction, the game is not finished by any means. They're taking their first step in a really solid direction. But along that path, there are lots and lots of ways for them to misstep. So while we do have a nice amount of confidence in this new build, and I've kind of come away from Gamescom not wanting to just quit CNC, because that's before Gamescom. I actually didn't have any hope for the new Command & Conquer. The direction that we were seeing and the progress that the devs had made up to that point in the 6 months that the alpha had been running, I was just not hopeful at all. But as a result, at Gamescom, assuming that what they told us is indeed their roadmap, and that's the roadmap that they stick to, they're going the right direction, but they're not there yet. So while we may be headed in the right direction and the momentum looks good, the roadmap looks pretty darn good from what they showed us, they're not there. I mean, it's simply not a finished game, so you still have to have a lot of patience, but I mean, we've been having patience for this game for 10 years now, since Generals was released, so I mean, what's a couple of more months at this point? A couple of more things that I do want to bring up. A lot of people have noticed, oh, the maps look like StarCraft. You are correct, and the devs are fully aware of this. In fact, they're really looking to rectify those sort of changes. The reasons that they borrowed a lot of stuff from StarCraft make sense. And I'm not sure what exactly I'm at liberty to say from the one-on-one conversations that I was able to have with the devs, but their explanations for why the game is the way it is made a lot of sense. So the maps, they're not CNC. They've got lots of chokes, and they have the sort of setup where it's like, you got your main base tucked away in a corner. There's not a lot of room to harass or anything like that. So I would really, really, really love to see the devs actually take a look at any sort of Command & Conquer game, just about. Any Generals tournament map, any CNC 3 tournament map, any Red Alert 3 tournament map, and you're going to have a better idea of how to really design a Command & Conquer map versus this, like, well, let's take a look at StarCraft 2 maps and sort of go off of there. Instead, I wish they would be trying to get some maps that look and feel like Command & Conquer maps. Go and remake Tournament Desert from the original game. That would be fantastic. That is what I want to see. And we have seen a little bit of glimpse of a tournament map that AGM has been working on, but that will not be out for probably another couple of months. So we'll have to see when that comes out, what changes it brings to the game. On the discussion of maps, I do want to bring out that the current set limit for players in a game is 6. You can have a 3-on-3, and actually one of the 3v3s that I got to play, the map actually looked and felt more and more like an actual Generals map, or even just like a Command & Conquer map in general. It was a nice flat map. There was room to harass and maneuver your units. There was some terrain shifting. It wasn't Tournament Arena, but it did have a lot more of a Generals feel to it, and it felt like I was constantly under pressure, and I started to get the feel of Command & Conquer once again. One of the things about the newest build that we had played was that there was a lot of speed and balance changes made to it. So infantry actually were constantly falling behind vehicles. They weren't just sort of skating and keeping up with vehicles at an insane pace. I mean, not all of the infantry are perfect, as you might have seen in the game I played versus John. In one of them, he has a commando at the end, and it just moves hilariously fast, and it's just like on roller skates the whole time with jet engines. It's ridiculous, and it looks hilarious. That's how all of the infantry were previously. They have fixed a lot of that. The animations fit a lot more, but this build was not polished in any way, so it's hard to tell exactly how much of a difference those changes made, but they certainly did make a difference. So some of you have been asking about upgrades. They are in the game, and they aren't just like StarCraft +1 attack, +1 armor, that sort of thing, but they're rather like other upgrades in CNC games and other upgrades in StarCraft, where they modify units at least a little bit. Maybe it's a new ability, maybe it's a passive ability that maybe it allows infantry to shoot out of vehicles. That's an upgrade for the EU. So there's a wide variety of upgrades available. However, they are not final by any means. In fact, one of the things that we discussed with the devs was the worth of upgrades, and did the upgrades that are currently in the game feel like they really matter. So that's something that the devs are absolutely taking into consideration, and they want to make sure that the upgrades feel good, that they make sense, and that they're interesting to have. Since it is alpha, let's get one thing out of the way. The game is not balanced. It is horribly broken, and the devs are aware of that. Everyone knows it. So yes, the game is not balanced. Simple enough to say. It's an alpha. Of course the game's not balanced. Some of the units aren't in, such as fixed-wing aircraft, which some of you may have noticed. There's no runways on the airfields. What'll I do? Well, it doesn't matter all that much, since runways didn't work properly in the game. They caused a lot of animation and terrain issues, where they would just sort of jut off the edges of cliff, or they didn't mesh well with the terrain. So they removed the airstrips themselves. Fixed-wing aircraft are not in the game just yet. They do want to add fixed-wing aircraft. That will be something that's going to be added to the game, because that is something that was really integral to Generals, so they're looking to bring it back, but it's just not done quite yet. Among other things that aren't finished is crushing. Now, crushing isn't in any of the builds that you've played. It wasn't in any of the builds I've played. It's in one of the dev builds somewhere in EALA. However, it's not finished yet. While it technically does work, the devs did explain that it doesn't match up with the animations properly, and as a result, it's currently in a stage where they know it works, and they're looking to add it, but they have to polish it and get it to a point where it works for everyone before rolling it out. Rolling out as in reverse move and directional armor? Well, those aren't quite added into the game just yet. Because of the client-server architecture, directional armor is actually extremely difficult to implement into the game. And reverse move, well, that's something that they really want to look at, something that we discussed multiple times, and something that will likely be added into the game at some point. However, they don't have everything quite locked down with it yet, so it won't be in for likely a couple of months. Population caps. Why did they include population caps? Well, they didn't. Pop caps aren't anywhere in the game. I don't know where this started, but there's absolutely no truth to that. You can see that in the game footage. There's alpha footage out there for you to look at with your own eyes. The only sort of cap is on electricity. You have to build power plants so you can build more stuff, unless you're GLA, in which case they don't even use electricity because, you know, YOLO, they're GLA. So the generals, how different are there? There's like 19 generals and it's not even open beta. The generals are carefully under consideration by the team. They've explained the generals A, aren't finished, and B, are going to be revised. So what you play in the next couple of months is not at all final. Some generals are simply missing units, and many generals haven't had their units tweaked to their style just yet. They're looking at re-examining the generals each individually to make sure that they actually represent a different play style and have unique characteristics. The destructible environment is so crazy and awesome. No, it's not. Destructible environment is only used to clear the maps of the clutter that fills them. That's the only reason that I use the destructible environment. I can't actually think of a game where the destructible environment has made a difference other than forcing my opponent out of buildings or forcing me out of buildings. That's about it. There's nothing else to it. So stop saying it. Really, marketing, stop it. Stop. Maybe I got a little distracted. So what about all this money? I mean, it's a free-to-play game. They have to make money somehow. They have to maintain servers and pay people and do all sorts of things like make profits for EA. How is all of this going to work in a free-to-play game? Well, the devs, based on what they've said, aren't entirely sure. My guess would be that they have lots of ideas. They have some board somewhere that's just filled of how do we make money on this game? Do we sell campaigns? Do we sell maps? Do we sell power? Just kidding. They don't want to sell power. They may be selling generals. They may be selling XP boosters, skins, voice packs, that sort of thing. But will they be selling campaigns? Probably. Do they know for sure how it's all going to work? No, they do not. So what about esports? Everybody loves esports, right? No, just kidding. But esports is going to be one of the focuses of the game. Of course, before they can get to esports, which is way over there down the line, they have to make a really solid game that's fun, that's competitive, and that is balanced. And all three of those things have to come before they can reach that successful esports marker. And they know that. They're not looking to set up tournaments and start throwing money at people right away, but they are looking to esports in the future. We'll have to see exactly what that entails, but they do have to get to the point where they have a really, really solid foundation to build upon, and they won't be stepping forward with esports at least until they've got a solid game to work with. Once it hits open beta, you're going to want to run the game, right? So can you? I don't know. Can you run Battlefield 3? Because the specs are going to be about the same. The minimum specs for Battlefield 3 are going to be roughly the same as Command & Conquer. So if you can run Battlefield 3, you'll be able to run this game, and that's a nice benchmark to use. So what are my overall thoughts? The quick summary. Well, it looks like we're heading in the right direction, in an awesome game direction. But of course, like any game in the world that's ever been made, it's hard to make a great game, and it's very easy to make a very bad game. So while the direction is awesome, what we heard, what we talked about was awesome, it's not there yet. They have a lot of work in front of them, but they know that. They also know that they've made mistakes in the past. Of course, they've quoted CNC4 a number of times, but they've also stated, hey, look, the alpha, it was not the best when we launched into the closed alpha. It kind of sucked. We know that, and we accept that. We're looking to learn from those mistakes, move on, and start making a great game. And that is what excites me the most, is that they're able to take a look at their mistakes and say, yes, that didn't work. Now let's work past it together and let's fix it. Let's make a great game. That's what they want. That's what they explain to us. As long as they keep that and they do what they told us, this game is going to be awesome, but it's going to take quite some time to get there. And if you're in the alpha and you're saying, it sucks, you're right. It's not very good right now. And that is what we're hoping to get past, is the not very good state to get to a place where it's fun. So is it fun? I had fun at CommandCOM, but I'll have to wait until I actually play the August patch in my home on my crappy computer before I can really say, is the August patch the first of the biggest steps in the right direction? It feels that way, but I just haven't played it at home yet. At Gamescom, it's a totally different environment. You're right there with a bunch of other people who are all passionate about CNC, and you're getting to play early builds. It's not the same sort of environment as playing it at your house on your own computer, which may perform a lot differently than what you play at Gamescom. So, release schedule. When is this thing gonna be out? They don't know yet. They, of course, do have internal dates that they have set, but they haven't released anything to the public in any capacity. They, of course, keep giving broad brackets of open beta probably in 2013, but likely it'll be pushed to 2014, and given the new Frostbite technology, given the new architecture, given the time that it takes to implement changes, I would seriously suggest pushing it to 2014. And I know some of you are like, what, 2014? That's like a million years away, but it seriously needs it. So depending on how the August build plays on my computer, we'll kind of get a better idea of where this game is going. But for now, it seems like it's headed in the right direction. And those are my thoughts on CommandCOM and Gamescom. Hopefully, you stuck around for the whole thing. If you did, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, I'll be in the comments down below. Of course, the Gamescom is not NDA'd in any way, so I can answer all sorts of questions that you may have. And other than that, this is Sybert, signing out.